Following Russia's meddling in the 2016 US elections and growing evidence of interference by authoritarian regimes in other democracies, it is now feared that Canada's federal elections in October could become the latest target in a mounting challenge to democratic processes worldwide. While attention is rightly focused on Russia, MLI Senior Fellow J. Michael Cole warns that Ottawa also needs to contend with the possibility of interference by Beijing. At the heart of rising apprehensions about China's interference is the escalating dispute over Canada's arrest and possible extradition to the US of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou on suspicion of fraud and breaching US sanctions on Iran. The Chinese regime has every reason to regard the upcoming elections as an opportunity to secure Meng's release and to engineer the election of a future government that is more to its liking. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has a variety of tools at its disposal, honed by experience in other jurisdictions such as Taiwan. For example, it could escalate its economic warfare against Canada by targeting sectors of the economy and export-reliant parts of the country with the aim of alienating those ridings from the current government. Given the large number of accredited Chinese diplomats in Canada, we can assume Beijing has thoroughly studied potential vulnerabilities. Likewise, candidates who hew closer to Beijing's line might be promised greater Chinese investment in their ridings. Universities, whose prosperity increasingly relies on full tuition fee-paying students from China, could also become tools of influence in the lead-up to the elections through the threat of boycotts, for example. Chinese students have been used this way on several occasions worldwide in retaliation for various affronts to CCP sensibilities. Additionally, the Communist Party of China may rely on its various proxies in the business community, political donors, captured elites in academia, think tanks, and retired government officials, as well as communities with large concentrations of ethnic Chinese, to undermine the electoral prospects of politicians seeking election. The Communist Party of China also enjoys near total control of Chinese language media in Canada, adding to the rampant disinformation being circulated on social media apps such as WeChat, which is popular amongst ethnic Chinese. The regime has perfected the practice of discrediting politicians over many years in Taiwan and Hong Kong. And the CCP's content farms are known to spread dis- and misinformation, cause confusion, and embattle a targeted government by forcing it to dedicate large amounts of resources to debunking false claims. Cyber attacks against political parties, local governments, Election Canada websites, and other critical sectors can also be used as a means to interfere with elections and, as with disinformation, erode public confidence in the integrity of an election. And we cannot rule out the possibility that the Communist Party of China will seek to buy outright certain candidates with promises of money or lucrative deals at some point in the future. Finally, in the case of the Liberal Party, former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's recent proposal to visit Beijing and negotiate a deal with Communist Party officials, whereby Meng would be returned to China in return for the release of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, an idea that would ensure the future capture of Canadian nationals whenever Beijing entered into a dispute with Ottawa, illustrates the potential for a serious split within the party, which could be exploited by Beijing. One factor in Canada's favor is that the Communist Party of China, as an ideologically driven authoritarian political entity, still fails to understand the workings of democracy, its inherent resilience, checks and balances, and could ultimately overshoot in a way that backfires against it. Vigilance will be key, and every effort must be made by our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, by the judiciary, and by other government agencies to track suspected foreign interference and implement appropriate defensive measures. In all this, Canada must do its utmost to protect Canadians of Chinese origin against efforts by the Communist Party of China to use them against our democratic institutions. Our agencies should in fact turn to these communities, a large number of them having left China because of their dislike for the Communist Party regime, and make greater use of their language abilities, their cultural affinities, and their understanding of the Communist Party's modus operandi. We can learn from them how we can better combat the Chinese government's interference in Canada's affairs. I'm Brian Lee Crowley for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute.